This conference will now be recorded.
So in the last session, we have discussed about Apex programming language, and we have discussed what exactly the Apex programming and what is the use, what we can do with the help of this Apex programming language, and yesterday we have discussed. Now, so today we'll see how an Apex program will get executes internally. We'll see that execution lifecycle today. So whenever I'm writing some Apex programming code, and upon executing the Apex programming code, how it will get executes internally, we'll see practically. But yesterday I told you, whenever I'm going to be executing this Apex programming, we are using two components. First one is an Apex compiler, which will be compiling your Apex programming code. Second one, an Apex runtime engine, which will be running your Apex programming code. These are the two components will be getting involved, okay, upon executing your Apex programming code. Then how it will get executes internally, what is the execution flow, we'll see practically now. Apex programming execution lifecycle. Now, so now today we'll see how an Apex program will get executes internally. We'll see practically in this case. Now, so let me explain that execution architecture or execution lifecycle. Now, so whenever we are going to be executing your Apex programming code, it will follow a specific execution lifecycle or a flow or an architecture. This is that architecture. So now let me explain that architecture, how the flow will going on internally. We'll see that. For example, assume that I am a developer. Okay, I am a Salesforce developer. I'm a Salesforce developer. So I got an opportunity as a Salesforce developer inside an organization. So I'm working in a specific team where we're implementing a Salesforce application for one of our client. So every day, my technical lead is assigning some tasks to me, and then I'm working on those tasks. So recently I have joined to that project. So as of now, he has assigned some configuration related tasks. Configuration means what? Admin related tasks he has assigned, so that I have implemented so many things as of now. Like as workflows, process builders, validations, object creations, relationships, all these things he has assigned to me. So till now, so I have worked on all those areas. Today, he has given a requirement related to development. He has given a requirement related to development. So he has given some requirement to me, and then he asked me to write some Apex programming code. He asked me to write some Apex programming code in order to implement that requirement. So in order to implement that requirement, he asked me to write some Apex programming code. Then how can we write that code, and then how this code will execute internally? Now let's see. Now as a developer, we have to write that Apex programming code. How? By using an editor. Where is that editor? That editor we can able to access through our Salesforce application itself. We don't have any editor in our local system. We are not using Notepad to write that code. We are using the editor which has been given by Salesforce, which can be accessible through browser only. Through browser only, we can able to get the editor, and then we can able to write the code. Then how can we write that code, and how that code will get saved? Now let me explain. So now, for example, so I'm a developer. So I'm a developer. So as a developer, it is my responsibility that I need to implement some application requirements based on the client requirement. We need to take up some task and then we need to work on those requirements. We have to implement those features by using configuration also, development also, integration also, anything we need to work on. As a developer, it is our responsibility. We have to develop that features. We have to create those features. We have to implement those features according to my client requirement. So today, my technical lead has assigned a requirement to me, so which can be implemented through Apex programming code. So through Apex programming, we need to implement that code. So we are going to be writing the Apex programming code. So I have prepared one Apex class. So now where we are writing this Apex programming code, we are writing through an editor which can be accessible through browser. By using the browser only, we can access an editor. I will show you when moving forward. I will show you how can we get those editors, how to write the code, everything I will show you. Now, so now I would like to get the editor, okay, through the browser itself. Okay, inside the browser itself, you will be having an editor. In that editor, we can able to write that Apex programming code. So by using this Apex programming language, I'm writing the code. Now, by using this Apex programming language, I'm writing some piece of code. That means I'm preparing an Apex class. So whenever I'm preparing an Apex class, then this Apex class will be storing inside a file. Because whatever the code I'm writing, that code should be stored inside a file, right? Yes. What is the extension of that file? That already told you in the previous session. Each and every Apex class will be storing inside a file with the extension .apexc. APX means Apex, C means class. Okay, Apex class. So each Apex class code will be getting saving inside a file with the extension .apexc. So now today, as part of my requirement, I have prepared one Apex class. So that Apex class will be storing inside a file with the extension .apexc. Now, so now where this code will be getting saved in my local system? No. This code will not be storing in my local system. That means nothing will be there in our local system. Everything will be there inside the force.com platform. So whatever the code you are going to write, and then whatever the code you are going to execute, whatever the result you are going to see, everything we can accessible through the browser only. Everything will be done inside that force.com platform. Nothing will be there in our local system. Our local system is just a dummy system in order to connect to that internet. That's it. Just to connect to the internet only, we are using that system. We are not installing anything. We are not saving anything in our local system. Now, so in this case, once the code has been getting written, so now that code will be placing inside a file which is having the extension .apexc. Apexc means Apex class. Now, once the whole code has been getting prepared, as soon as once you click on that save button, where this code will be getting saved? In my local system, in my C drive, D drive, E drive, in my local system? No. It is not saving inside my local system. Whatever the code that we're preparing, this entire code will be storing inside that force.com platform. This code will be storing inside the force.com platform. So now here in this case, whenever I'm going to be saving this code, once the code has been getting written by the developer, upon click on that save button, this code will be sending to the force.com platform as a request, because this code is not compiled. That means compiling means what? Whatever the code that I have written, that code may be having many syntactical mistakes. The code may be having any syntactical mistakes. So we need to verify that. Who will verify that? For that one, okay, we are having a specific component is there that will take care of that. Like for example, assume that. Today I'm facing some problem with my mobile. I have given it to the service, okay, to a service center. I have given my mobile to that service people. Okay, that means inside a service center, I have given my mobile for the service because there is a problem in that mobile. So once they're done with that service, and then they will return back that mobile to you. So now I went to that service center to collect my mobile. I have paid that amount for the service charge, and then I have collected that mobile. Now tell me, so now whenever you are collecting that mobile, first of all, will it test that mobile, right? Yes. That means whatever the problem that we have faced previously, the same problem will be repeating right now, or the problem has been solved. For that one, we are testing, right? Yes. So here also, so now this is not a compiled code. That means whatever the code that have written, whatever the statements that have written, whatever the business logic that have written, this is not yet verified. It is not yet compiled. Compiling means verifying the syntactical mistakes. Because who has written that code? Developer. Developer means human being. So as a human being, we can do some mistakes. We can do some mistakes also. So in this case, okay, in this case, I don't want to continue that mistakes inside my force.com platform. So I need to verify that. Whatever the code that I have written, so now I would like to verify whether this code has been, okay, whether this code has been prepared based on the syntactical rules of Apex programming language or not. We need to verify. For that one, we are sending this code to that force.com platform. So that here this code is not yet compiled, this code is not yet verified. So as soon as once you click on the save button, this uncompiled code, this uncompiled Apex programming code will be sending to the force.com platform as a request. Okay, it is sending this for Apex programming code to that force.com platform as a request. So in this case, okay, in this case, whatever the code has been sent to the force.com platform, force.com platform will not be allowing this code directly into that, okay, inside that platform. First of all, we'll do the necessary verification over here. Okay, the force.com platform will do the necessary verifications. So what kind of verification will it do? Now let me explain. Now, in this case here, as soon as once you click on that save button, it will be sending your Apex programming code to that force.com platform as a request. Now, in this case, upon click on this save button, okay, as soon as once you click on that save button, as soon as once you click on that save button, then it will be sending the whole code to that force.com platform. So what kind of details it will send? It will be sending that Apex code. This is also called as farm data. This is also called as farm data. It will send your Apex programming code. Whatever the Apex programming code that you have written, that code will be sending to that force.com platform that is called as farm data. And along with that, it will be sending that header information. It will send your header information. And then, along with that, it will be sending your system's IP address. Your system IP address. It will send your browser information. Which browser you are using, it will send that browser information also. And it will send your operating system information. Operating system information. It will send the user ID. Nothing but who has written that code? Developer. Developer means a user, right? That user will be having some user ID, right? Yes, that user ID also it will send. And along with that, it will verify, it will send the organization ID. Organization ID. Okay, organization ID. It will send all this information over here. It will send all this information. So now here, as soon as once you click on this save button, simply generally the people will thought of my code is sending to the force.com platform. Not only your code, okay, not only your code, it will send that header information also, your system's IP address also, your browser information also, your operating system information also, your user ID also, your organization ID also, and along with that session ID as well. All this information will be sending from your local system to that force.com platform. Upon click on that save button, okay, to send this code to that force.com platform, it will send this whole information to that force.com platform. So what it will send? Your Apex programming code. Header information, nothing but data packets information. Your system IP address, why once the request has been sent to the first.com platform will process that request. It will send the response back. To whom I need to send the response? To you only, right? Because here, how can we identify you in the entire world? How that first.com platform will identify you in the entire world? For that, it will be collecting your system's IP address. Then upon sending that information, it will be collecting your browser information also. Why it is collecting the browser information? Like for example, assume that I'm accessing Amazon website inside the Chrome browser. Okay, inside the Chrome browser, I'm accessing Amazon website. It will be looking like it's perfect. It will be looking like exactly okay as they have designed. Look and feel will be looking like very exactly perfect. All the elements, colors, everything will be looking like perfect. Suppose if you are accessing the same Amazon website by using Internet Explorer, then the colors will be getting changed. Some elements will not be available properly. Look and feel will not be visible exactly. Because here there are some browser compatibilities are there. Whenever I'm accessing one website in a browser, in Chrome it will be displayed very perfectly. But if I'm accessing the same inside that Internet Explorer, it may not display exactly. There are some issues will be there browser to browser, so that here it will be collecting your browser information based on the browser which you are using to access this application. In that browser compatible code only will be sending the response to you. So that here it is sending the response okay with your browser compatible code. For that one, it is collecting your browser information also. Along with that, it is collecting your operating system information also. And then it will collect your organization ID. It will verify whether this organization ID is correct or not. That means, do we have any organization with this particular ID or not? It will verify. It will verify with this ID, do we have any organization is exist or not? Organization means what? Already you know, that is Salesforce account. Organization means Salesforce account. Do we have any Salesforce account with this ID or not? It will verify. If the organization is available, then it will collect your user ID. It will verify whether with this ID, do we have any user is available or not. In this organization, do we have any user is available or not with this ID? If the user is available, it will go to that user's profile. It will go to the user profile. In that user profile, it will check for a permission. It will check for a permission. What is the permission that we need to create the Apex classes? During the profiles concept, already I told you, there is a small permission okay, which will be required in order to create the Apex classes. To create the Apex classes, we need a permission called as other Apex permission inside your profile. Inside your profile, we should have a permission called as other Apex. Other Apex. Let me show you that practically. Let me log in into my Salesforce instance. Let's go to that user. Go to the training batch user. There is a user. Go to that user's profile, that is system administrator profile. In this profile, you will be having one permission called as other Apex. See, so this is the permission. Other Apex permission. So now what is this permission here? If you are having the permission inside your profile, okay, if you're having the permission inside your profile, then only Salesforce will allow you to create the Apex classes inside the organization. In order to create the Apex classes, we need a permission called as other Apex permission inside your profile level. Okay, inside your profile level, we need a permission called as other Apex. So now, in this case here, okay, now here in this case, for the system administrator, it will be getting okay enabled automatically. For the remaining people, we have to make it enabled. Okay, for the system administrator, because system administrator will be having full control. So that here by default in the system administrator profile, it will be getting enabled, and for the remaining people, we need to get enabled manually. Here depends upon your application requirement. So that here, this is the profile over here. This is the permission inside that profile. Okay, you know that concept. As part of security, we have discussed so many features. Okay, we have discussed so many features. As part of security, already have given this whole information to you. So many features I have discussed. See, in order to create the Apex classes, okay, we should request a permission called as other Apex permission is required to create the Apex classes. Now, so many features we have discussed as part of security concept. I've given almost some 50 to 60 features I have discussed with you regarding licenses, profiles, user management, and then roles, OWD, and the sharing concepts also, and the transferring the record ownership, manual transfer, automation, queues, web to lead, web to case, and the email to case also, and then profiles, permission sets, login IP ranges, everything we have discussed. All these options we have discussed here. So now, as part of this concept that I already told you, in order to create an Apex class, we need a permission called as other Apex permission. So in this case, now today here the developer is creating this Apex class, so it will collect that user ID. Based on the user ID, it will go to that user's profile. In that user profile, now the first platform will verify. The first platform will verify whether this user is having that other Apex permission in his profile or not. If the user is having that permission, then only your request will be entering into that first platform. This much of verification will be doing by Salesforce. Simply when I click on, after writing that code, when I click on save button, don't think Salesforce is simply saving my code, not like that. Internally, this much of verification will do by Salesforce.
Sir, what about session ID, sir?
Session ID is nothing but in order to verify whether you are already an authenticated member or not. Already you have logged into your application or not. Already you have given your credentials or not. For that one, it is using the session ID. Okay. Once you have given your credentials, then session ID will be getting generated. So now based on the session ID only, we can able to keep and initiate the request. Now, so now here in this case, it will be verifying all this information. As soon as once you click on that save button, it will be sending this much of information to that force.com platform. It will collect your organization ID. It will verify your organization is valid or not. And then it will verify, do we have any user with this particular ID or not? If the user is available, then this user is inactive or not, it will verify. If the user is active, then it will go to the user's profile. In that profile, it will verify whether this user is having the permission to create the Apex classes or not. By verifying the permission other Apex. If the user is having that permission, then only your request will be entering into that force.com platform. So upon click on that save button, this much of verification will be done by Salesforce. So now, once the request has been entered into the force.com platform, then in this force.com platform, we have two components. Okay, in force.com platform, we have two components. First one is an application server. First one is an application server. Second one is a metadata repository. Okay, metadata repository. These are the two components are available. There is an application server. There is a metadata repository. What is this application server? Application server will take care of compiling the code and executing the code. In order to compile your Apex programming code, in order to execute your Apex programming code, whatever the functionalities are required, all the functionalities will be available inside this application server. And then once the code has been getting compiled, to save that code, because the code is not saving in my local system, then where it will save? To save this code, it is using metadata repository. Metadata repository is nothing but a location. Repository means location, a place, okay, a place where it will be storing all your Apex classes, Visual Force pages, Apex triggers, batch classes, schedule classes, web services, APIs, whatever we have implemented, everything will be storing inside this metadata repository. Generally, when you go to Java or .NET, after writing the code, we have to save into a local system. Suppose in my local system, today I have written so many programs. Today night my system has been crashed because of some virus. Then my whole data will lost, right? Yes. But in this case, there is no chance of loss because nothing is there in the local system. Everything has been stored inside that force.com platform. Force.com platform is a secured place. If something went wrong, then Salesforce is having the backup and restoring mechanism. It will collect that information back to me. There's a disaster recovery mechanism is also there. We can get back each and every bit of data back. So that here, as part of my force.com platform, we have two components are there, application server and then metadata repository. Application server will take care of compiling your Apex programming code, executing your Apex programming code. So in order to run your Apex programming code, to compile that code, whatever the features are required, all the features are available inside this application server. And then to save that code, it is using a location that is called as metadata repository. Metadata repository is a location or a place where exactly your Apex programming code and your Visual Force Pages code and your controller classes, your triggers, your batch classes, schedule classes, web services, APIs, all this information will be getting resides inside this metadata repository. Now, these are the two components are there. So let me explain each and every component in detail now. So now, as soon as whenever your code has been entering into the force.com platform, immediately force.com platform will be sending that code to that application server. It will send that code to that application server. Blindly, it will not be storing inside the metadata repository. Only the error-free code, only that without any errors, whatever the code is there, that code will be storing inside that Salesforce. The error code will not be storing over here because if the code is having some errors, when you try to execute that, it will be causing some issues. It will be impacting on the cloud. So that's what here Salesforce won't allow you to save that. Okay, the error code. Only the error-free code will be saving inside this. Now, so in this case here, initially it will be sending that code to that application server. So now in this application server, we have two components are available, Apex compiler and the Apex runtime engine. Two components are available. As part of this application server, we have two components are available, Apex compiler and the Apex runtime engine. So what is this Apex compiler will do? Apex compiler's main responsibility is it is going to be compiling the code. Compiling means what? Whatever the Apex programming code that have written, it will verify whether the correct this code has been written with correct syntax or not. Whatever the code that you have written, that correct code syntax will be correct or not. If there is any syntactical mistakes available inside that code or not, it will verify whether that code has been prepared based on the rules, based on the principles, based on the guidelines of Apex programming language or not. It will verify that. Now, so mainly it will be verifying that syntactical mistakes of your Apex programming code. So Apex compiler is going to be receiving that Apex class first. Whatever the Apex class that I have written, so now that Apex class will be receiving by, because that will be receiving by my Apex compiler first. It will verify do we have any syntactical mistakes available or not. So now here, if I'm having any syntactical mistakes, then what will happen? If there is any syntactical mistakes are available inside my code, Apex compiler will not allow you to save that code into the metadata repository. Immediately, it will be sending the response back to the developer. So boss, in your code, we have identified some mistakes. These are the various mistakes that you did upon writing the code. So please correct those mistakes. Please modify the code. Please rectify the code and resubmit the code again for the recompilation process. So this is the functionality of Apex compiler. Now, Apex compiler is going to be collecting your Apex programming code. It will compile that. It will be line by line to check the syntax, whether the syntax is correct or not. If the syntax is not correct, if there is any syntactical mistakes are available, then immediately it will be sending that response back to the developer. Dear developer, so these are the various mistakes that you did in your code. So these are the various syntactical mistakes we have identified. So please correct these syntactical mistakes. Please modify the code, write the code according to the syntactical rules, and then resubmit the code for the recompilation process. Then, so that it is sending that compilation errors over here. What are the various mistakes that you did? It will be sending that compilation errors here. Now the developer has to receive that code, he has to modify the code, he has to correct that syntactical mistakes, and he has to resubmit the code for the recompilation process again. Then again it will be compiling the code here. Once the code has been compiled successfully, if there is no syntactical mistakes are available, okay, if there is no syntactical mistakes are available, then immediately the compiled code will be saving inside the metadata repository, so that whatever the compiled code that you have written, okay, the compiled code will be storing inside the metadata repository. So metadata repository is the location where exactly, okay, where exactly your compiled code will be getting resides, error-free code without any errors, okay. There is no syntactical mistakes, everything. The complete code will be available inside this metadata repository. So in this case, as soon as your code has been compiled successfully, that compiled code will be storing inside that metadata repository. Once the code has been getting stored inside the metadata repository, and one copy of that code, okay, one copy of that code will be storing inside your an object called as Apex class object. It is using an object over here. It is using one object called as Apex class object. Yesterday I told you, okay, yesterday I told you all the Apex classes information will be storing inside an object called as Apex class object. Okay, Apex class object. So now we are having this Apex class object is available. In this Apex class object, one copy of your code will be getting resides. So that here, okay, so that here. Now, in this case, once the code has been getting compiled successfully, it will be sending this code to the metadata repository. Metadata repository is going to be, okay, saving this code inside that Apex class object. It will save one copy of your code into that Apex class object. Whenever I'm going to be saving this code into that metadata repository, then this code will be sending to the Apex class object. Apex class object will be saving your code over here. So once the code has been getting saved, then it is generating one ID. Like for example, whenever I'm creating a record inside my account object, it is generating one ID, right? Like the similar way, this entire Apex class code will be treating like as a record. So it will be generating one ID. That ID will be sending to the metadata repository. Now, metadata repository will be sending that ID back to the Apex compiler. Once your code has been compiled successfully, your code has been saved inside the metadata repository successfully here. This is the internal execution. Now, so in this case, as soon as your code has been compiled successfully, compiled code will be saving inside the metadata repository. Metadata repository will save one copy of your code inside that Apex class object. Apex class is a standard object in Salesforce which contains all your Apex classes. Whatever the Apex classes that you have prepared, all the Apex classes code will be storing inside this Apex class object, and then it will be generating an ID, and then that ID will be sending back to that Apex compiler. Apex compiler will be receiving that ID of that particular Apex class, and immediately it will be sending a indication to the Apex runtime engine. So now, dear runtime engine, just now I have compiled one Apex programming code. I have saved that class code inside the metadata repository. This is the ID of that Apex class code. So the code is available in the metadata repository. Please collect that code from the metadata repository and execute it, and then send the response back to the developer. Because Apex compiler's job is simply, it has to receive the Apex class code, compile that, saving inside the metadata repository. It will be sending that indication to the Apex runtime engine. That's it. Its job is over. Then from there, Apex runtime engine will take care of that further process here. Execution will be taken care by Apex runtime engine. So now here in this case, as soon as whenever the Apex compiler is going to be sending one indication, boss, dear runtime engine, just now I have compiled one Apex programming class code. That class code is already there inside the metadata repository. So this is the idea of that Apex class code. Please collect that code and execute it, and then send the response back to the developer. So as soon as Apex runtime engine is receiving the ID, based on that ID, it will make a request to that, okay, metadata repository. Boss, this is the ID. Please give me that record information. Please give me that Apex class code. So it is making a request to that Apex compiler metadata repository to get that compiled code. Whatever the compiled code is available, without any syntax, error-free code is available in the metadata repository. It is making a request to the metadata repository to get that compiled code. So now the metadata repository will receive the request. It will be sending that requested code. Whatever the code it has requested, that code will be sending by that metadata repository to the Apex runtime engine. Now, Apex runtime engine will be receiving that code. It will place that code inside a temporary memory. From there, it will start executing this Apex programming code. Once the code has been collected from the metadata repository, it will place that code inside the temporary memory, and from there, it will start executing that code. Upon executing that code, sometimes it has to interact with the database also. Why? Because inside that code, I have written some code, I have written some statements to connect to the database also, to perform some DML operations, to perform some SOQL queries, to perform some SOSL queries also. So that I might have written some code in order to perform some operations on the database by connecting to the database objects. So that here it is going to be interacting with the database objects also. So that upon executing the code, it might be interacting with the database also, that is called as the database.com, that you know that. Already in our initial classes of Salesforce, we have discussed Salesforce is using its own customized database that is called as database.com. So it is interacting with the database.com also, it will execute your code. Once the code has been executed successfully, it will be generating the result. Okay, it will be generating the result over here. So now, once the result has been getting generated, then it has to send the response back to the developer. That means it has to show the result. Where the user can see the result inside the browser only, not in the command prompt. Whatever the result is generating, that result we can see inside the browser. If you want to see the code inside the browser, then that should be in the form of HTML format. So that here, whatever the result has been generated, the result will be converting into HTML format. Okay, whatever the result it has generated, the result will be converting into HTML format, and this HTML format of code will be sending to the developer, okay, inside a file that is called as a debug log file. Okay, that entire result file, that entire result HTML code will be sending to the developer, okay, by placing inside a file that is called as a debug log file. This is called as a response, nothing but execution result. So debug log is nothing but a result file in which you will be having your actual result, your application code, and then how many bytes of memory you have consumed to execute your Apex programming code, and then what is the result of that. If there is any exception, those exceptions information, how many SOQL queries you have executed, how many DML statements you have used, how many SOSL queries you have executed, how many emails you have sent, how many web services you have invoked, everything, the whole application, your program execution history will be there inside this debug log file. Debug log file will be having your actual result. We can see our application result inside the debug log file over here. This is the whole execution process of your Apex programming code. Okay, this is your Apex programming code execution lifecycle. Okay, understood this lifecycle now? Now. So now here in this case, let me repeat this one more time a bit fast. So now the developers are going to be writing the code by using the Apex programming language. That code will be storing inside a file with the extension .apexc, Apex class. After writing the code inside the file, as soon as once you click on that save button, this uncompiled code will be sending to the Force.com platform as a request. And then the Force.com platform will do the necessary verification process. If the verification process has been successfully completed, then it will be allowing this code into that Force.com platform. Once the code is entered into the Force.com platform, immediately the request will go to that application server. Application server will send the request to the Apex compiler. Apex compiler is going to be receiving the code. It will compile that code. Once the code has been compiled successfully, it will save that compiled code inside that metadata repository. And metadata repository will save that one copy of the code inside this Apex class object. And then it will collect the ID from that metadata repository. Then immediately Apex compiler is going to be sending an indication to the Apex runtime engine. So this is Apex class code which I have saved right now inside the metadata repository. So please get that class code, execute it, send the response back to the developer. Then Apex runtime engine will be collecting the ID from the Apex compiler. Based on that class ID, it will make a request to the metadata repository. Dear metadata repository, this is the ID which I'm sending to you. Please return the code of this class here. Based on this ID, whatever the Apex class is available, please return me that Apex class code because I want to execute it. Then, based on this ID, metadata repository will search for the code inside this Apex class object. It will collect that code. It will send that requested code to that metadata application runtime engine. Then the Apex runtime engine will be collecting the code. It will place that code inside the temporary memory. From there, it will start executing that code. Upon executing this Apex programming code, sometimes it needs to interact with the database also. So it will be connecting to the database. It is performing the operation. And finally, it is generating the result. Once the result has been getting generated, then it will convert that result into the HTML format because the user can see the result in the browser itself, not in the command prompt. So if you want to see some code inside the browser, then that should be in the form of HTML format. So it will be converting that result into the HTML format. That HTML format of response will be sending to the developer, okay, in the form of a debug log file as a response. So now in this debug log file, you will be having the whole application execution history, your application code also, how many bytes of code you have executed and how many bytes you have consumed to execute this application, and then what is the error messages has been occurred, what is the result of your application, how many SOQL queries you have used in the application, how many SOSL queries you have used, how many web services you have invoked, how many DML statements you have performed, everything, the whole execution history will be available inside this debug log file. So we can go to the debug log file. In this debug log file, we can see the result. Your program execution result we can see inside this debug log file. So debug log file is a place where exactly we can see that application result. Okay, so now here this is the actual execution life cycle of your Apex programming language code.
Sir, in data, why sometimes only save in database, sir?
Sorry?
The code, why sometimes only save in database?
Why? Because it's here. So now in every code, I'm not writing the code to interact with the database. Sometimes I'm writing some small programs which doesn't request any database. Directly, I want to execute that code. I want to see the result. That's it. Like as a mathematical calculations. I don't want to connect to the database. Directly, we can do some mathematical calculations. We can show the result here. Suppose if you want to get some data from the table, then we can interact with the database. So at that time, depends upon the code which you have written, it will connect to the database. If it requires, then it will be getting the response back over here.
Then we take time, sir, to get output?
No. Because even though if it is connecting to the database also, it will be taking the time in terms of milliseconds. Okay, milliseconds. Maximum 200 milliseconds, not more than that. Because 1 second will be having 1000 milliseconds. That means it will be taking almost 20% of your second. 20% of your second. Not more than that. That means 200 milliseconds maximum transaction execution time.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Now,
so
this is the whole execution flow of your Apex programming lifecycle.
Yeah, Firoz, one question here. So you told
Yes.
metadata repository. So one copy of file will be placed in Apex class object. So it will be referred with one ID. Okay. So what about
Yes.
the code which is stored in the metadata repository? Does it have any ID?
Now,
or how it's useful?
No, it doesn't have any ID over here. It will be having the link. Whatever the ID generated by the Apex class object, that ID will be placing inside that metadata repository. In this metadata repository, it will be having the class active status. Nothing but status information will be available in the form of XML. Okay. The XML format of code will be available. Metadata repository means XML format of code will be available inside this metadata repository over here.
Not the original code.
Okay. Not original code. Original code will be there in the Apex class object. Suppose if you want to query that information, we can query. Directly, we can go to your Salesforce instance. You can query that code also. Like for example, let me show you. Just to go to the developer console, you can query what are the Apex classes are available inside your organization. So what are the various Apex classes are available? We can query over here. Now, I'm using the query editor. We can query that. Select ID, comma, ID of the Apex class, name of the Apex class, and then body, nothing but actual Apex class code from Apex class object. Apex class is a standard object over here. Click on execute. We can collect the Apex classes. So it is indicating total number of rows are 0. Nothing but there is no classes are available inside my Apex code. Suppose if you want to know, okay, sir, whether really it is storing the Apex classes or not, then let me show you by logging into some different account. Let me log in into a different Salesforce account. Let me show you that. I'm logging into a different Salesforce account. There I have prepared some Apex classes also because they're in the middle of development. Now, so let me go to the developer console. If you want to query your Apex classes information, we can go to the query editor, select that, select ID of the class, name of the Apex class, body from Apex class object. Click on execute. We can see all the Apex classes. Totally 14 Apex classes are available. These are the Apex classes are available inside my organization. Suppose if you want to collect that Apex class code, just to go to that body column here. These are the IDs have been generated by Salesforce. This is the name of that Apex class over here. We'll see how to create the Apex classes, everything. Now, this is the class code. If you want to collect that class code, just double click on that. Use the Control A to copy that whole code. And then we can able to paste inside this. I'm pasting over here. I'm pasting inside this. So this is the entire Apex class code which I have prepared here. Okay, I have prepared so many lines of code as part of this class. I have prepared so many lines as part of this class code. So many methods are also available inside this. Like that, we can able to see each and every line code over here. So in this case, instead of splitting this each and every line code manually, so we can able to go with some other tools also. In the internet, you will be having so many tools are available. Let me explain. There are some tools are available because here, for example, whenever if you want to go outside, okay, to a function or to a marriage occasion, then the people are going to be spending some time to make their face look like as beauty. So that here they're using some cosmetics, powders, and all these things. So like the similar way, whatever the code that I have written, I would like to do some makeup for my code also. For that one, we have some beauty tools are available in Salesforce. So now here you will be having a tool called as Code Beautify. The Code Beautify. Code Beautify is a tool which is available in the internet on free of cost. Whatever the code that I have written, we can convert that code into a specific format over here. Based on some programming language, we can able to convert that code also. Like because here the code is looking like as, okay, here the code is looking like as a single line. This is not able to understandable format here. If you want to make this code to be look like as in a specific format, okay, for that one we can able to use this Code Beautify tools also. By using these tools, we can able to convert that code into a specific format, which will be very easy to understand. The possibilities are available. Various features are available as part of this Code Beautify. So we can able to use this kind of tools also. Okay. Now. So now here in this case, whatever the classes we have prepared, all the classes information will be storing inside your Apex class object. It will collect your organization ID also. Where is that organization ID will store generally? Organization ID will be storing inside your organization object. You know that here. So now if you want to collect your organization name, we can able to collect ID, name from organization. Organization is a standard object in Salesforce which will be giving your organization details. So this is the ID of my organization. This is the name of my organization, like as ICICI Bank. I have given that company name. I have given like as ICICI Bank upon creating the Salesforce account. Okay, we can collect all these details also. Every information is there inside those objects itself. That possibility is available. Okay. So this is how it will be executing that code internally. Now, this is the way your Apex programming code will get executes internally. Generally, nobody will discuss all these things, but whenever you are going into the real time, you should be able to understand how the flow will going on internally. Okay, it's the most important question in the interview point of view. Now, the next one. So now whenever I'm writing this Apex programming code, as of now we have discussed how my Apex programming code will get executes internally, we have discussed. Now, so whenever I'm going to be writing this Apex programming code, then we are using the various fundamental building blocks. We are using the various fundamental building blocks because every programming language will provide a set of fundamental building blocks to you. So fundamental building blocks means what here? The basic functionalities which we can use upon writing the code. Now, so in this case, what happened? So now whatever the code that you are written, okay, whatever the code that you are writing, initially, because I'm new to this programming, I don't know how to write that complete code by my own. I don't know how to write this complete code by my own. So initially what we can do, we are using some ready-made features given by the programming language, and we will write some small programs. Okay, whatever the ready-made features are available in that programming language, we'll use that ready-made features, and by using those features, we can able to write some small programs. And when moving forward, once we feel comfortable with the programming, then we will develop everything by our own. Initially, it is new for me because I'm new to Apex programming. I don't know how to write the code and how to execute by my own. So what we can do, initially I'm using some ready-made functionalities given by Apex programming. With those features, I will develop some small programs. Once that development has been done, once I feel comfortable with the programming, after some days, I will develop everything by my own. Okay, I will create some complex functionalities by my own. I will write that code by my own. So now here in this case, like the similar way, okay, like the similar way here also, when coming to the Apex programming is also providing the various fundamental building blocks. Apex programming providing the various fundamental building blocks to you by default. As part of these fundamental building blocks, Apex programming is providing one of the fundamental building block called as data types. Okay, data types. So as part of Apex programming, first of all, we have to understand what exactly the data types. As part of fundamental building blocks, we are having data types, we are having variables, we are having operators, we are having output statements, like that. We have so many features have been given by Apex programming language to you. We'll see each and every feature one by one. These are some fundamental building blocks. These are some basic elements which we can use to write that Apex programming code and to execute that code to see the results. Now, so as part of this basic element, the first basic element is the data types. You know what is the data type? The description is there in the name itself. The description is there in the name itself. So what do you mean by this data type? Data type. Type means what? What type of data? What kind of data you are going to store inside the variable? Inside the variable, what type of data you would like to store? For that reason, we are using data type. Now, this data type concept already we have discussed during our admin concept also. During our admin concept, okay, before creating the fields, I have given some almost 19 data types to you, like as email type, phone type, URL type, number type, currency type, text type, pick list type, like that 19 data types I have given to you. Along with that, I have given some more additional data types like as formula, and then I have given like as lookup relationship, master detail, hierarchical, all this information I have given to you. Like the similar way, whenever we are writing some code to store the data, we are using some variable. So that variable will be of type what? What type of data that variable can store? So what type of data you want to store inside the variable, we can indicate with the help of this data type. So basically, data type describes two things. Okay, basically, data type describes two things. First one, what type of data the variable can hold. Second one, how much memory needs to be get allocated for that variable. So in order to store the data, how much memory needs to be get allocated, that we can indicate with the help of this data type. Okay, now, so now here, data type describes the below two features. First one, what type of data the variable can hold. Second one, how much memory needs to be get allocated for the variable. For that variable, how much memory needs to be get allocated here, that we can indicate. So in this case, each and every data type is having that its own functionality, is that every data type will be having its own type of values can will allow, and then when coming to that every data type, it is having its own fixed amount of memory space is available. Now, so that's what here every data type will describe two things. What type of data, whether it will be allowing to store numerical values, or will it be allowing string values, date values, time values, boolean values, or what? What type of variables, what type of data that variable can hold. Second one, how much memory needs to be get allocated. That means to store that integer value, to store that numerical value, to store that boolean value, how much memory has to be get allocated. 1 byte of memory, 2 bytes of memory, 4 bytes of memory, how much memory has to be get allocated internally. That will be indicated by data type. So now here in this case, when coming to the data type, we'll be describing these two things. What type of value the variable can hold. Data means value can hold. Second one, how much memory needs to be get allocated for the variable. That means to store that value, how much memory has to be get allocated. These two things will be taken care by data type. So as part of Apex programming, okay, as part of Apex programming language, we have two types of data types are available here. As part of Apex programming, we have two types of data types are available. Now, we have two types of data types in Apex. What are those? First one is primitive data types. Primitive data types. Second one is subject data types. First one is primitive data types. Second one, yes, subject data types. These are the two types of data types are available in Apex programming language. Primitive, yes, subject. So what do you mean by primitive? Primitive in the sense basic or fundamental. So primitive in the sense what? These are the fundamental or basic data types. So now basic in the sense what? Every programming language will be providing some common data types. Okay, some common data types. Every programming language like a C, C++, Java, .NET, every programming language provides some common data types. Those are comes under primitive. So primitive data types are nothing but these are the various basic or fundamental data types which has been given by Apex programming language. Okay, now these are the basic or fundamental fundamental data types provided by the Apex program. These are the various of fundamental or basic data types given by Apex programming language. What are those fundamental data types? Like as integer, long, double, decimal, boolean, id, string, date, time, date time, object, blob. These are the various primitive data types which has been given by Apex program, like integer, long, double, decimal, boolean, id, string, date, time, date time, object, and the blob. These are the various primitive data types has been given by Apex programming language. Now, so let me go in detail of each and every data type. Okay, let me go in detail of each and every data type. Now here in this case, let me explain each and every data type one by one.
Hello. We cannot hear you, Firoz.
Feroz, your
Yeah,
voice is not
now,
audible.
yeah. Is my voice audible now?
Yeah.
Okay, now. So these are the various types of data types has been given by Salesforce as part of, the primitive data types. Now, the first one. So I would like to go in detail of each and every data type because these are very, very important when moving forward to that, Apex programming code. While writing the code, we are going to discuss about a concept called as, ORM. In that ORM, it will help you a lot. Now, so now let me explain each and every data type over here. Now, the first one. First one is string data type. So now what do you mean by the string data type? String data type will allow us to store a collection of characters. It may be one character, it may be multiple characters. Because when you go to some programming languages, to store one character, you will be having a character data type. To store multiple characters, they are having string data type here. But two data types will be there at that time. But here in Salesforce, we don't have like this two, we are having only one. So string data type is used to store one or more number of characters. In order to store a collection of characters, we are using this string data type. Now, string data type allows us to store a collection of characters, including the special characters also, including the special characters like as dot, comma, hash, dollar, anything. So in this case here, whenever I'm going to be storing this kind of collection of characters inside this variable, how much memory will be getting allocated? So whenever if you want to store some characters, okay, inside this particular string data type, how can we store? So whenever if you want to store some characters, then we have to enclose those values in the single quote. Now, so now while storing the data in string variable, we have to enclose the values in the single quote. For example, I want to store some name like as some Ram Kumar. This Ram Kumar we have to enclose in the single quote here. Sometimes I want to store the value some Santosh. We need to enclose in the single quote. I want to store some values like as some welcome to Apex programming. One complete sentence. We can able to enclose in the single quote. I want to store some gender like as some like as a male. Okay. Now I want to store that value some female like as F. Single character. It may be single character. It may be multiple characters also. We have to enclose in the single quote. Then how much memory will be getting allocated? In this case, depends upon the number of characters we are storing. Those many number of bytes of memory will be allocated. So in this case, how many characters are there? We are having that here 5 and then here 3. Okay, so totally 8 and then one space. Space is also counting as one character. Totally 4 and 5, 9. So that totally 9 characters are available. So it is allocating 9 bytes of memory over here. So for each and every character, it is allocating 1 byte of memory. Now, let me give the note point. Each character in the string value will occupy 1 byte of memory. Each character will occupy 1 byte of memory. Depends upon the number of characters you are storing, those many number of bytes of memory will be getting reserved. Now, so up to this is fine. String data type is used to store a collection of character values, where we need to enclose those values in single quote always. It's a fundamental principle of Apex programming language. Now, so now tell me what field types will supporting this string data type now. What field types are supporting string data type? Now let me explain. Like for example, upon creating this field, for example, I'm creating a field inside my object. I'm creating a field. Whenever I'm creating a field, it is having so many data types are available. Now tell me in this data types, which data type will be storing string type of values? Now tell me. From these data types, which data types will store the string type of values? Text data type, one person has raised. Okay, correct. Next. Any more thing?
Text long.
Okay, text area.
Text
Area long.
Name.
Text area rich. Okay. Text
The
area
event
rich
one.
control.
Number.
Email one.
Email. Email
Okay,
also.
email. Okay, email.
URL.
URL. Right. Pick list multi-select, phone, and then
Phone.
geolocation, and then we are having the
Phone number,
data
URL.
types, and then we have auto number. Auto number is also having some collection of characters inside this.
So, Firoz, do you also? I have a question.
Yes,
Do you also consider pick list as a string?
yes, because here pick list also storing the string values, right? Because I'm storing the pick list value like as industry. In that industry, I'm storing like as banking, finance, insurance, healthcare, all these things. These are nothing but string values, right? No. So like the similar way here also. Okay, like the similar way here also, whatever the field types are available, from these field types, few of the field types are referencing this string data type by default internally over here. This is the internal concept of ORM. Okay, this is the internal concept of ORM in Salesforce.
So how come phone number will be a string?
Because phone number is going to be having that values. Like whenever I'm going to be entering the phone number, it is indicating +91 and that is including that values. It is indicating this value. Whatever the phone number that I have entered, this phone number is converting into US phone number format, right? In this case, you are having that braces are available, spaces available, hyphen is available. These are characters, right? Characters and then numerical. This is nothing but alphanumerical. That means string values.
Okay.
Now,
so it should not accept
What is not
the
considered?
alphabet.
What is not considered under string?
now I will tell you that remaining data types are there. We'll see. Some data types are having some different. The field types are available. I will show you one by one. Okay. Now, so now here in this case here. Now, each text field, comma text area long, text area rich, email, phone, URL, pick list multi-select, and then geolocation, auto number. Fields are referencing the string data type by default. Okay, each text field, text area long, text area rich, and then we are having that email along with that phone, URL, and then pick list multi-select, geolocation, auto number, and then we have the field like as text encrypted, text encrypted. All these fields are referencing string data type by default. This is the internal functionality of the string data type of ORM. Next, the second one is Boolean data type. What do you mean by Boolean data type? What type of values it will store? Boolean in the sense?
True or false?
True or false. Okay, true or false. So Boolean data type will allow us to store the values of either true or false. Now, it allows us to store the true or false values inside the variable. Now tell me which field types are referencing this Boolean data type. Now tell me from this one. Which field type is referencing this Boolean data type?
Checkbox.
Checkbox. Right. Because here each and every checkbox is referencing Boolean data type by default. Because checkbox will be having two states basically, either checked state or unchecked state. It will be having checked state or unchecked state. Checked means what? Whenever the checkbox is selected, it will be returning the value true. If the checkbox is not selected, it is returning the value false. So that here every checkbox field is referencing Boolean data type. Each checkbox field will reference the Boolean data type by default. Now, the next one, ID data. So now tell me, okay, what is the use of this ID data type? ID data type is used to store the record ID. Because that already you know, in our initial concept we have discussed, whenever we are creating some records inside our Salesforce object, for every record Salesforce is allocating a unique identification number that is called a record ID, which contains an 18 characters alphanumerical number. okay, which contains an 18 characters alphanumerical number, and from that 18 characters, first 3 characters are called as object ID, remaining 15 characters are called as actual record. In that record ID, last 3 characters are called as transaction code, or that is also called as checksum. Already we know this entire concept in our starting phases of configuration features. Now, so in this case, when coming to the ID data type, it allows us to store the record IDs, which can be either 15 characters or 18 characters also here. Now, this data type allows us to store either 15 characters or 18 characters, 18 characters record ID inside the video. Now, so now tell me which field types are referencing this ID data type now. Which field types are referencing this ID data type?
So the number.
No.
ID.
ID, okay. Lookup relationship, right? Lookup relationship or master detail, whatever, any relationship type. Whenever I'm selecting the parent, what it will store the ID of the parent record. Like for example, assume that I'm going to be creating a position record. So in this position record, I'm selecting that. In this position record, I'm selecting the hiring manager. To which hiring manager I'm assigning this position responsibility over here. I'm selecting the hiring manager. So I'm selecting the location as from Hyderabad. I'm selecting the hiring manager over here. Like as for example, Chandrasekhar. Whenever I'm selecting this Chandrasekhar is a HR person, what it will store in this column? In this column, it is storing the ID of this Chandrasekhar record, not the Chandrasekhar name. It won't store the name, it will store the ID of this Chandrasekhar record here. So in this case, every lookup relationship field, master detail association field, hierarchical association field, external object lookup relationship field, these are all storing ID fields over here. These are referencing ID data type by default. Now, each ID field, comma, lookup relationship field, comma, master detail, hierarchical and external lookup relationship field will reference the ID data type by default. These are the internal concepts of ORM, object relationship and the mapping. Okay, now, so we have few more data types are available as part of this primitive. We'll see the remaining data types in tomorrow's session. In tomorrow's session, we'll continue with this data type concept, and then we'll move forward to that some more features, like as we are going to be discussing about variables, operators, output statements, all these things one by one. Okay.